Like we ought to start pretty soon. Let me introduce you. I'm Kathleen Cook. I'm the president of the Arizona Authors Association, and I've known Patricia since I first started with the Arizona Authors Association back in 2008. And she was doing workshops for a long time. She's done this workshop all across the state, libraries, ASU, a lot of places, and similar workshops. Uh, if you ever want to know the meaning of bravery, please check out her books because her memoirs are the epitome of bravery. and and so that's what this one is about. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the president of the Southwest Scottsdale Society of Women Writers. Forgive me. And she's been great in that too. So thank you, Patricia. Take it
Thank
over.
you. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I know we still have people coming in, but I'm going to
Yes.
go ahead and get started. And the format that I'm going to use is I'm going to share slides. I have about 10 slides to share. Some are a little more involved than others. And then I'm going to field questions. So just save your questions. I'll answer all the questions you want about anything. Well, almost anything. And anyway, then I've got an activity that we'll start on, and then I'll send you off with that activity. So I'm going to try the share slide right now and see if we can do this. First of all, I titled the workshop, Write the Memoir You're Afraid to Write, because that's the title of my latest book that came out last fall. And this is actually the picture that was used. It was edited a little bit for the cover. And I'll give my husband photo credit on that. He took that candidly, which is sometimes the best picture. I won the Arizona Authors Best Category for Nonfiction work this past year, and I was truly honored. I was truly honored to have a win with this book. Now, I have a little bit more information to give you before I get into writing memoir. First of all, I sell the books for $15 on Amazon. I have 3 memoirs and I have the book about writing memoir. I will ship one for free to any of you, so you don't have to pay the shipping on Amazon for the flat rate of the $15 in the book and sign it. Also, if you have any interest in doing my extensive class that starts the 28th of February at ASU, there is a fee for that. We can chat on text or email. All of that's here, even on the phone. So I can tell you more about that. I don't want to take time today. And also about my writers club that I've had for 20 years here in Scottsdale. And I bring speakers in. So any of that information that's of interest to you, then contact me. And there probably will be time for some questions about this at the end. But if there isn't, we'll make sure that it works for you and that we have a connection. But all the books, all the information about this workshop, the ASU workshop, the next Writers Club workshop, everything is on my homepage on the website. And I have a wonderful person that helps me. So don't be too impressed that I did all of that by myself. Okay, let's talk about writing memoir. Why would we write stories and what do we want to share? This is really critical and really important that you take time to think about this. I really encourage people when they write to keep a journal. Now, your journal is not your book. It's not even probably your stories, but it's your ideas for your stories. It's used to sort of clear out your head and talk to yourself. I love journaling. I think it's really important to journal in different areas of your life, but certainly with your writing. I have a little sticker on the wall above my laptop that says, my goal with my books is to help others. And that's my purpose. I've advocated for lots of different themes that relate to my books. So that might be what works for you. If not, you might just want to share your experiences. Or you might want to entertain people, inform people. You might want to do all of that. But think about why you want to write your stories. What's important when I say stories, I mean your memoir. But what's important to understand is that you can mesh your stories together, and I'll talk a little about structure later, but you can mesh your stories together, have them in separate vignettes. I like a memoir to continue, transition into the next chapter and the next chapter. But whichever way you do it, it's important to think that through in the beginning, and also what you want to share. It's obviously personal knowledge that you have. Now, a memoir, and I'll talk about that on the next slide, but a memoir is not an autobiography. It's a topic, a theme, a premise of a part of your life. That's why I have three memoirs. I'm writing a fourth short story book, and I have the other nonfiction. My husband's written several short story books in memoir fashion because he focuses on different topics. And that's really the main difference, but I'll clarify that a little bit more later. So your personal knowledge is important. Is it your personal knowledge? I'll give you an example. My first book I wrote 20 years ago. I've since revised it. That's another thing. You can redo the book if you want to and add to it. It's really about my experience with my sister who passed away with lung cancer, but it's about sibling relationships and how we can take them for granted, how we don't keep them safe and connected. And so it's a lot about that, and a lot of what I learned about grief after I put that book out a few years after she passed away. I did do a lot of research on grief and did some grief workshops and really enjoyed that. So I felt I had a really good knowledge about grief before and after I wrote the book, because it's your personal knowledge, it's your experience, it's your life. Maybe you've had some lessons learned. A good example of that would probably be my second book, which is Three Husbands and 1,000 Boyfriends. And a lot of the lessons learned in there obviously are about relationships. I have a lot of solutions in there, ideas. There's some information about love addiction, which is childhood abandonment, some information about domestic violence. And as Kathleen said, some of my memoirs, well, I think they all are probably in the brave category.
Yep.
But I've never been somebody to be, concerned about what other people think in a negative way, because most of the time we all know that has nothing to do with us. If your heart is in the right place and you're writing your book on the right path, then the lessons that you have learned and the solutions you have are valuable. That's why people read memoir. And then you might just want to share inspiration. Maybe you've been very successful in a business. Maybe you've hiked every mountain across the country. Maybe you've lived out of the country for 20 years on mission work. I mean, there's a million things, or just things that you've done, here in our country that would inspire people. So think about all of that and what you want to share. Okay, again, it's not an autobiography. You're writing a memoir. You're writing a slice of your life, what shaped you. A lot of what shaped me was my third book that I wrote, which is called Sick as My Secrets. And what shaped me today has been over 40 years in recovery, both as a participant, as a leader, as a speaker. I've been very involved with that world for a long time. So that's a slice of life that I wanted to write about and share. Now, yes, most people in recovery are anonymous, and I was until I was in recovery about 30 years. And I realized I had a lot to share, that I wanted to get out and speak and do that with a book. And I did the book first. A single theme, you might need to do some research, and why not? Like I said, with my first book, I researched grief intensely. I went to grief workshops. I wanted to understand all those steps. There are about 5 or 6 of them, depending on who you ask. I wanted to understand what it was like for me to go through them. I knew I had gone through a lot of those steps. So you might need to do some research, because even though it's your story, your experience, your expertise, you want to go deeper than that. Specific life experiences, it requires detail. So that might be how you would sum up your memoir. And again, you can write more than one. They might overlap a little bit. But don't be concerned if you get to 80,000 words and you still have a lot more to say. Then write the next book. Okay. You want to make it a learning experience, and learning in a lot of different ways, because people decide they want to read memoir because they're looking to learn something. Maybe they're just curious about how you survived doing something, or how you made this happen, or what it was like to travel to all those countries that you went to that you're going to write about, the good, bad, whatever. So make a promise somewhere when you promote the book, when you write the back verbiage of the book, which is what we sort of call the real estate of the book. It's a valuable part of the book, the back cover, that what you're going to teach them, and that you're the authority, and be confident with that, because people want to learn when they read a book. I certainly do. Learn something. It doesn't have to be academic per se, but just learn a little something. Also, you might think about how you can share your lived experiences and be helpful to people. We're not just documenting what happened to us. We're going deeper in that, and I'll talk a little more about that later, but we're sharing our lived experience, but we're going deeper than that. We're getting our emotions in there. I'm in a critique group. I've been in a critique group for 20 years. All my books, all my husband's books have all gone through my critique group. Invariably, every time I receive somebody else's pages, or they receive mine, we're all looking for, where's the emotion? Where are the feelings? Where's the emotion? Where is the book? Where are we being brought into the page? So if you share your experience, if you're helpful, that will happen. And then it's always good to think about what is your personal angle on life? My books are spiritually based. They're not religious books. And I can tell you that they're not, because I tried to get my books in the Mormon bookstores, Desiree, and they wouldn't take my book. They weren't religious enough, and that's okay. My books have a spiritual tone, and that's my angle on life: is fate. How did I get from where I came from to where I am now? The odds of me living this past year to 75 years old were far against me. I thought I might make it to 40, and I was not physically sick. So think about how your angle on life has changed as you've written your stories, and share that. Okay, this is where I talk about going deep into what you're going to talk about. Think about crossing over to narrative nonfiction. Years ago, and I'm talking, 10 or 15 years ago, I went to, and I've gone many times since, the ASU Writers Conference that comes up in the spring. Actually, now it comes up in October. It used to be in the spring. Anyway, I heard a man speak about creative nonfiction, narrative nonfiction. His name was Lee Gutkin, and he wrote sort of the how-to. And I realized that I wanted to go deeper with my next books. My first book, I really told the story about my relationship with my sister. And I didn't use the fiction techniques like I've used in my second, third book, helping my husband with his books, blah, blah, blah. What this means is that you tie the book to a hook, a plot, to dialogue, to scenes. And on the next slide, I'll talk about that a little more extensively. But that's the literary style. Those are the techniques that are in fiction that should be in memoir. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. The key, though, is that you don't embellish the story. You're writing a nonfiction book when you are writing a memoir. So it does have to be truthful. And if you remember, years ago, there was a guy that got on Oprah, and he was becoming famous, and he had this book that became very successful. Well, anyway, Oprah busted him because she had her researchers discover that he'd made up most of the story. And so his publisher pulled the book. Yeah, I mean, what a waste of time. Everybody wants to get wanted to get an Oprah at that time, and he blew it. But his publisher pulled the book, let him write it again as a fiction piece, and that's what he did. So the lesson learned there is write your story, your truth. Don't fictionalize anything. It's what you're supposed to do when you write nonfiction. If you do the narrative creative aspect, then you immerse yourself, engage the reader, and you're looking at it through a memoir lens, which is your lens, and they will too. How you view the book will eventually cross over to the reader. Okay, so these are the things that you want to think about. Hooking, the reader into the story. So when I do the 8-week class at ASU, we go into this a little more in depth, but basically what I want to share here is that you want a teaser closer to the front of the book than the middle of the book. You know, you want the book to rise and to level off, pretty much similar to a fiction book. You want to catch people right away. Now, seasons might be important to your book. I grew up in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. We were talking about that earlier, how it's just, you know, gut-wrenching cold. But the seasons are really important because it's beautiful there in the summer. And my first book, I wrote a lot about Mackinac Island and the ferries on the bay and all of that. But also, not only are seasons important, but your senses, not just what you saw and what you heard, but what did you smell? What did you taste? Can you bring any of that into the book to liven up the book, engage yourself and, of course, the reader? And then the characters, develop them. In my 3 Husbands and 1,000 Boyfriends, when I talked about a couple of my high school boyfriends, I tried to really make them kind of interesting. You know, I thought, geez, if I spent a year with these guys, they went to prom, they must have been kind of interesting, instead of just giving their name and mentioning them. And that's, you know, one of many examples. But the characters in your book, including yourself, make those people interesting. We don't have to like them to find them interesting. You know, they may have a lot of negative things that have happened to them, or positive, that might not appeal to us, but make them interesting. Dialogue's a real catch-22. I didn't do dialogue in my first book until I, as I said, went to this class about 15 years ago and realized how critical dialogue was even in memoir. You don't have to remember it verbatim. You don't have to. I mean, it's impossible. I'm trying to remember the conversation I had yesterday at lunch with my husband, you know. So, I mean, to try to remember what I said to somebody in 1968 is impossible. But you can remember the gist of the conversation. And you, in your heart, are telling your story, your truth about that conversation. And it doesn't have to be long. But, you know, in research a little bit how to write it, because there's a specific way to write dialogue. And not say he said and then she said and then you'll understand that they're pretty simple explanations on Google that'll help you with that. And there very likely could be a plot to the story. There has to be something where, you know, things climax, things happened, and things turned around. So think about, what is the plot of the story? Why did I decide this was the first memoir I was going to write? This was the theme I wanted to focus on. Okay, there are lots of possible scenes, you know, that you can do scenes about, you know, that include the weather, that include where you grew up. Sometimes, if in the longer class that I do, the 8-hour class, I have people do an exercise about describing where they grew up, the town, the house, the neighbors, the pets, you know, to just get that scene in their head, to train themselves to think beyond. You know, I could just say, well, you know, I grew up in a little house on Lake Huron, and it was okay, or it was nice, or that skims the surface. So really try to visualize your scenes. If you can go back to some of those places, which I'm fortunate to be able to do that in that scenario. But most of my life has been in Arizona in the last 50 years. So that helps too. It just depends on what you want to do. Place is important. The place where the action happened is important in describing that. What time of the year was it? Do you cover different seasons? What time in your life was it? What is the era? I'm a baby boomer. Is that era important to the memoir? The time in your life? We transform. I'll talk about transformation later. We transform as we go along. Okay, couple quick things here. We want to focus on capturing our story. Say that a little slower. Everybody's voice, his style, the way they speak is unique. Maybe the way you speak is the way you've spoken your whole life. Maybe as times evolved, if you're like me, you've lived in 4 different states and you talk differently than you might have, you know, 50 years ago or 20 years ago. But your voice is unique. I encourage you to read other memoirs, read fiction too, but definitely read other memoirs. You're not trying to steal their voice or their style. You're just trying to learn about the different voices and styles that are out there and what is unique about yours compared to somebody else. I try to read a memoir every month. I read some celebrity memoirs. Some of them are, written by other people in my writers club or people that I know, friends. Somebody tells me, "Oh, you'd love this memoir. I just read it." To get that, to hear that voice, because a lot of times the celebrity memoir is written by somebody else and they're giving input, so you don't get a true voice necessarily. When you capture a story, you want to put your heart and soul in it. Don't think of it as a writing project, an assignment. Don't think of it as something that you have to do or you want to do because you think, well, like me, it might be your third career. And I need to do this. I need to do something with my time. Maybe I could make a little money. Scratch all of that. Think about how you can put your heart and soul into what you're writing. You must have a reason for why you picked the theme and the topic that you're going to write about, the overall umbrella of the memoir. And it's in your heart and soul. And sometimes we need to just be quiet, just be quiet and listen for that. And that'll come to you. Why is this gnawing at me in the night? Feel passionately about what you're writing. If you don't feel passionately about the book, you will never finish it. And I know that for a fact because I started on something else. Before my sister passed away, before I knew she had lung cancer, I was writing a business book. I have 2 business degrees. I've been teaching business at ASU, consulting. My heart was not in it. I didn't feel passionately about it. It was just what I lived and breathed for 30 years. And then all of a sudden I had a purpose with the situation with my sister. I told her I was going to write the book about our relationship. I have 2 other sisters, by the way, but we all know we're not close to every sibling. It's just not reality. And so, I had a different purpose. But you'll also know if you're on the right path and feel passionate, if those emotional beats come up, if you feel emotional about what you're writing. If you don't come to tears at some point in your memoir, nobody else is going to. So that's sort of your emotional test. Do you feel really strongly about what you're going to write about? Okay. The truth. This is always an important one. I'm a big proponent of, just tell your truth. It's your story. Both my sisters that are still alive, I have sister and one that's a year and a half younger than me, are the first ones to say, well, I didn't see it that way. I don't think that's the way it happened. I don't think that was it. But we all have our own truth. And we all experience things differently, regardless of whether it was later in life in my career or how I viewed things, or if it was something, back when I was 16 or whatever. It's your own truth, and that's what you want to be loyal to and value. And take it head on. If your truth is coming at you, don't sugarcoat it in your book. Now, there are some things that I purposely left out of the book that I wrote, a couple of them. The book that I wrote about my the 3 Husbands book. But I don't know where my first husband is. My second husband, we've stayed pretty good friends. We talk on occasion, maybe once a year. But I called and interviewed him about a couple of things before I read the book. Of course, he has such a big ego. He was just thrilled he was going to be in somebody's book. So don't be afraid to write your truth and think, gee, what are they going to say about me? Are they going to retaliate? Are they going to do this? They do that. You're not slandering anybody. I would almost put money on it with everybody that's here that slander isn't even a part of what you're doing. Excuse me. So your truth is important. And I haven't had any problems with retaliation. The person that I was in the domestic violence relationship with, I took him to court, a civil court and a criminal court. I won both cases. I've never had retaliation. I do not use his name in the book. I have a couple of nicknames for him, well, anyway, they're nice enough. Anyway, But I didn't worry about retaliation because I was telling the story. I even went back and talked to the lawyers, went back to the city of Phoenix and got documentation. So your truth is everything. Being unapologetic is a real key. I don't apologize to anybody about what is important to me to write about. Now, everybody's different. Nobody's ever called me shy, so that's probably to my advantage. But I don't think apologizing about our work is where we even want to go, because it is our work. It's important. It's valuable to us. It might have saved our lives. We don't know. So think about that. Apologies aren't needed. If you want to run something by a family member or a friend or somebody that was in your life during your career that you're writing about, whatever, do that if that works for you. It's always good to have a sounding board, and I've done that with some people, but there are some people that I don't. Don't avoid any tension or obstacles. Everybody's had obstacles in their lives, and it's important in a memoir to write about those. We've all had obstacles. A lot of times, that's why people read your memoir. They're looking for that tension and the solving that happened so that the obstacle was overcome. And it's important that you think about where you can go with that. And that can happen in a lot of different things, not just in traumatic situations. That can happen. You might lose a family business. My sister that passed away, her first husband lost their family business, 3 generations in Michigan, big Italian family, 3 generations, very successful. And when he inherited the third round, the third generation, he ran it into the ground. Now that's a story that should be written. That's a story that could really help a lot of people. How does that happen? Do your kids always want to take over your business? Probably not. It's hard for people to accept that, but those obstacles are important because they will help somebody else. Okay. Facing fear. Let's chat on that just a little bit. I believe we get messages from our subconscious. Now, I'm not a real woo-woo kind of person. I like to go to Sedona and all that, but I really believe that we get messages from our subconscious. We get messages from, our gut. If we go deep into telling our story, into how we feel about something and reveal how we felt about something, how we reacted to, how did we react physically, not just mentally or emotionally? Don't hold back about that. I write in the book about my sister. I write about my sister's vision coming to me after she passed away. I write about having physical problems after she passed. I had migraines for years that were as a result of the stress. I think it's important to reveal those kinds of things that might seem so personal, but that's what memoir is. It's your personal story. And I mentioned earlier, not to fear retaliation. I have never feared having anybody come back to me and say, this didn't happen, that didn't happen, or why did you didn't have permission to say that? But everybody has their own level of comfort with that. If you are uncomfortable with something yet you want to put it in your book, you might consider an intellectual property attorney. And there is somebody in my writers club that is in that field. She has been for years, written a couple of books about it. So if that's something that you're toying with some of your writing, then contact me. I gave you my contact information earlier, and I'll refer you to her. And of course, there's a fee for that, but it might be where your comfort zone lies. Okay, so we have to look at a couple of things before we move towards the end. The whole idea of writing memoir is that we have a transformation of sorts, and that will happen. I'm going to look at just something right here. Okay, that will happen with our personal growth as we write. Now, I tell people, if you're in the middle of something that's, family related, business related, personal at any level that's not resolved to some point, then your personal growth hasn't happened. It's not your time to publish the book. Now, it might be your time to journal. It might be your time to talk things out with family or friends. It might be your time for therapy, and time to start writing. But your personal growth and your transformation really needs to happen so that you can be the authority, the expert, and that you can stand back a little bit, even though you're digging deep into the story, be able to stand back and analyze it. That's what your critique group will do. But if you're caught in the middle of, I had somebody in my critique group a long time ago whose daughter had graduated from Columbia. She was a big deal in Manhattan, the whole thing. Anyway, to make a long story short, she got into heavy duty drugs and was lost somewhere in the United States. I mean, she went from here to boom. And the gal is in my critique group, and she's in the middle of calling the police every day, calling the detectives, this and that, and going to therapy. And I said to her, you've got a story here. And now the good news is 14 years later, her daughter's very successful, long story. And so the story needed to be told, but she was jumping the gun until she had some growth and her daughter had some growth, and they could come back, bring their relationship back to where it had been when her daughter was in college. And sometimes that happens. We've already talked about being brave and courageous. That happens when you have turning points in your life and you have insights about your turning points. So give that some serious thought, because bravery and courage are critical in a memoir, no matter what it is, especially if you admit that you had a business for 20 years and you did all these things you incorrectly. You should have done them this way, and you're a valuable resource to people. Maybe you've lived on the grid, and you just walked away from society for 10 years and now you're writing about it. But if you had to do it over again, you might not do that. I mean, those are insights that are critical in a book. Excuse me. I've been coughing for a year, so don't think that you're going to get germs through the computer. Gratitude and forgiveness. This is an area that's really profound for me. I love to look back on what I'm grateful for, and incorporate that in all the books. And we can all be grateful about different things. Maybe you journal about gratitude already. Maybe you've confronted forgiveness. If you have a situation in your family or with a friend or something where forgiveness needs to happen sometime, that could be a real turning point in your memoir. That could really make the difference. And of course, then whatever wisdom you've gleaned from that, there's a lot of wisdom from forgiving somebody, because it sets yourself free. I don't know if any of you probably have seen the movie Dead Man Walking with Sean Penn and Susan Sarandon. Well, we watched it last night on TV for at least the third time. I love that movie. The thing about that movie is it's powerful. If you've never seen it, it's a powerful movie. She won the Oscar for it, but also it's so much about understanding forgiveness. And that's, to me, is really the beauty of that movie. And can be a beautiful part for your stories too. And by the way, that was a book, and the nun that Susan Sarandon played is a real person, and she went to the Oscars with her. And I mean, the whole thing's fabulous. So anyway, if you're looking for an old movie, there you go. But anyway, think about those words when you, and what's the wisdom you've gleaned from them. And always, I mentioned earlier the story about my friend whose daughter was in the middle of chaos when she was trying to write the book. Writing at the right time was the point of that comment. I guess a good example I can give of my own, after I started journaling about being assaulted and going through some workshops with other women in that situation, I realized that I had to get to a certain point where the forgiveness and the gratitude came in, where when it was the right time to write that book. And I put it away after I worked on it for about 2 years. I put it away for at least 6 or 9 months, and then I came back to it. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to just take a breath because you're writing about some powerful things that have happened to you. Okay, I have an exercise that I want us to do, but I want to stop here. I want to look at some note that I have. Okay, I want to stop here and stop this share and take questions. And I guess what we'll do is have you, let's see, let me make sure I can see everybody.
Oh,
Okay. If you want to just jump in or if you want to do the raised hand, just throw out any question about what I've talked about, any question about, your writing. Uh,
I did want to ask you something, Patricia.
yes.
You actually inspired me to write my own memoir, and I finally got it published like in 2016 or something. But what I did, because I knew some people would be hurt, so what I did was I changed all the names, but I left the first letter of the name the same. So
Mm-hmm.
Kevin is Kyle and Chris is Cal, and so that's how there was a tie-in to everybody else. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, because you said you have to tell the truth. What I did was I put an epilogue on it that I wrote in it. It's a fictional epilogue. It's a conversation that I think my ex-husband had with someone, that I would assume that what he said about me. And
Mm-hmm.
I said it was pure fiction, the epilogue, but everything else is my memories. And I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering if that's okay, if you can have a fiction like that, as long as you tell people up front it's a fictional possibility.
Definitely. And a couple things. First of all, I agree. Well, first of all, let me make a comment about the names, and then I'll address the other thing. My first book, I didn't have anybody's names. The second and the third book, I used first names, and I left the first names. But I've never used anybody's full name. We can Google everybody. I mean, the
Oh,
dead. We can Google everybody.
yeah.
And so I think that's important that you are comfortable with whatever you do with the name. So your idea was fine. Some people completely change the name. They don't even have the connection. Um, it's whatever's important to you. And then what was your second comment was?
And the second one was the epilogue being
Oh,
fictional,
yes,
but saying
yes.
up front that it was fictional. So I wasn't trying to tell anybody that it was,
Right.
truthful.
Yeah, and that's anywhere where you can have a disclosure. And disclosures are important, regardless of what kind of book that you write. And that's a great example of a disclosure.
just a minute. I'm training.
In your copyright page, you might have an opportunity to put a disclosure, but always think
Yeah.
of how you can do that to make sure that people understand. Um, this is written to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
what I
I knew
remember.
he was going to
However,
think that of me, so I just wrote a
right.
conversation with him saying the things that I knew he was going to say, but I had no actual evidence.
Right,
You know.
right. And I think that's fine. It boils down to your truth and your comfort zone. And, we all have different kinds of families and different people to deal with. So,
Yeah.
okay, who else has a
Patricia?
question?
Oh,
Yes,
Patricia?
James, yes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions here. One is, um, can you write memoirs and then later fit them into a more of a life story? Is a series of memoirs, does that ever fit? I wrote one brief memoir. Subject was I started to write an email about it to my kids. And I got carried away. And I went, this is not appropriate for an email. So I switched into Word and I put it on the microphone and I just started telling the story and worked
Mm-hmm.
on editing later. And it turned out to be about 8 full single space type pages. I went back, cleaned it up a little bit, sent it to my kids, and all three of them came back and said, "Wow, Dad, we really appreciate you doing that." Uh, But can something like that ever fit into a bigger story?
Oh, of course it could. Sure, it depends on what the topic was. When you say bigger story, remember a memoir is a single slice of your life.
Right.
It's a focused area of your life. But it sounds like it's an excerpt that could be put into a memoir, tie it in some way. And there are always stories kind of on the front and the back that of the memoir that aren't ones that you think you're going to put in the beginning, and then they tie in as you work on it. So I think anything that you write that's personal, that falls under the umbrella of your theme, is fine. Now, you're kind of leading me into structure. Let me make a comment about structure on a book. As I said, my first book that I wrote about my sister, I picked 12 words that reminded me of my sister. And they were everything from, well, gratitude and forgiveness were in there, but also love, friendship, all kinds of things. And then I wrote to those words, and that's how I structured the book. Now, this was my first book, and this was over 20 years ago, so I've learned a lot since then, but it did work. And then the last chapter, I took my sister's spirit to Ireland, and that's a whole dive off of what the other was, but it closed it up at the end. So that's a structure. Now, what you might want to do, if you like writing shorter stories, you might do, you might do what my husband has done with his books. He writes vignettes, and then he sections them off, like sports, family, friends, Tillamook, where he grew up, or whatever. And but he writes vignettes, and they tie together in that section. So you might think he's done that in 2 books. He's doing that in a 3rd book. And that's the way he likes to write. He has all these quirky little stories. Now, my husband is 90, and he wrote his first book at 82 and the second one at 86. So don't get discouraged in anybody that's listening, because, he quit playing golf and needed something to do when I was writing. And he had told me stories, just like you told the stories to your kids. I was more interested in his kids, and his grandkids were more interested than his kids, which could happen to other people. But he started telling me these stories. So you might think about, do you have a lot of stories that are like the location? A section could be the location. Another section could be like his was sports. He played sports in high school and college, and well, even as a little guy. But so that was a whole other section. And then there are traumatic things that happened to him, so that's another section. It's just an idea for structure. It's still memoir because it's all his stories, just set up differently than one story transitioning in to the other. So his overall theme, like his third group of stories, the title's going to be Tillamook. It's not just about the cheese. And if that's where the cheese factory is. Mm-hmm. And the first one was Bounce Back, and it covers a lot about him being in a serious car accident in college and losing his scholarships. People died. It's horrible. Intestinal Fortitude was the third one. And while I'm mentioning those titles, titles should really be short and quick and to the point, just a few words. Whomever they are, say that about 7 words is the max. Most people don't even do subtitles anymore. I have a subtitle on my first book, but I don't on the others. And I do have, I think, 7 words on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, 7 words on the last book, and that really is the max. So, just when you're thinking about putting it all together, thinking about the title, how you're going to structure it, how you're going to section it, is important. It's important to just have those little things coming along. You don't make those final decisions for quite a while. But anyway, I hope that helped you. But keep your
one more
stories
question.
coming.
What
Yes.
is the difference between a vignette and a memoir?
Oh. Well, the vignettes are just the short stories that he put into a publication. So they're like a short story. I probably shouldn't even use vignette as the word, but that's what they are. It's like a short story that, and so like I said, he has a section for
memoirs,
sports.
which could be a whole book.
Right.
book
Yeah.
about
Right. You
that.
can put all those little short stories and vignettes, one and the same, into a book. I would section them off, though. Your table of contents have different sections. But the memoir topic, or the memoir topic, I guess I should say, can be used for his stories because that's what they are. He just didn't transition them into, this event and this event and this. He has them stand alone, but it's the same concept.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question? We have lots of time. It's about 10 to 11.
Thanks, Sean.
Oh, yeah, I did. I've sort of answered myself, but back to the topic of permission in a way, or not needing permission to write about somebody who's still alive. I am writing a memoir, and there's sort of a main character in it who is alive and rather well known, at least in certain fields. And I do go back and forth between not worrying about what they may or may not think about it. I sometimes think, oh, that person could very likely never even know that a memoir exists that they're in. And then I sometimes think I could just send it to them and say, letting you know this is happening. And there isn't anything particularly negative about this person. But they don't end up being the great savior that they might wish to be. So I have this conversation going on in my head once in a while as I continue through the drafts of the book. And do you have thoughts? I mean, nobody can tell you not to write your own story. Do you have thoughts about the pros and cons of letting a person know that you are writing a story?
Well, my feeling about it is if you have concern, then maybe you should do that. But that it all goes back to your choice and your comfort zone. In my Three Husbands and 1,000 Boyfriends book, I do have a professional athlete story in there, and I don't use his name at all. And because, well, he has passed away now, but he had later remarried, and I was in his life for 3 years. And, I mean, his name is, everybody here would know who it was. And I'm only saying that because I really did not want the name in the book to protect really him, his family. I know who his kids are, and his daughter still, lives here actually. But that was but I didn't tell him I was writing that story. He had, he'd gone on and gotten married and again, and he was never my husband. And, but I just, I told the story of how it impacted me being in that world for 3 years. That was really the point of the story. So how did that person impact you? Were they an important part of your story?
Yeah, I don't think that the story could be told without using their name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But once again, I don't think that, I mean, from my point of view, it's not like anything is slanderous or anything
right.
like that. And there are other people in the book who I just don't use their name because I'm not trying to do a tell-all. But you couldn't tell the story without, because that person is in a way an impetus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My gut feeling is that if that person's alive and it's not a negative scenario, they might be flattered. I mean, they might be flattered that you want to include them in the story. They might even contribute something to, kind of think about how you would approach them, maybe with the idea, just send, is this person in 1 or 2 chapters or all the way through the book?
They're through the book.
Through the book. Okay. I would pick a couple chapters if you decide to contact this person, which it sounds like you're leaning in that direction. I don't want to tell you to do that. You might, like you say, it's not slanderous. It's nothing that's extremely negative. You're not accusing this person of murder, or I don't think so.
Oh.
It's kind of the topic flowing around. But anyway, yeah, I would send a couple chapters and engage your letter with the idea that you would like their feedback, ask if they want to contribute anything. That might, it's amazing when you just tap somebody's ego, you can win them over. I mean,
Yeah.
as crazy as that sounds, but it's true.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Sounds interesting.
I'm sorry I came
Anybody
in
else?
late to the meeting. I'm sorry. Are we gonna get a recording of the meeting?
The meeting is being recorded, and in about a week or so, Kathleen or Jane will have it available to you.
Oh, thank you. I really apologize for coming in late.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
okay. That happens.
But I don't know if you covered this. I just wanted to know what would be the best way to start a memoir.
The best way to start. Okay, well, you're leading into my activity, so good for you. A couple things for starting, and we'll do that in a little bit. I recommend that people start out. I mentioned earlier with my first book, I picked these dozen words and wrote to these words. My husband had sections. A lot of memoirs do a lot of different things. And there's a pro and con to why you would do an outline. I say casual outline. Don't do the outline we learned in 8th grade where the A has to follow the B has to have a B and all, it's not a structured outline like you would use in business. It's a casual outline to get you thinking about where you're going to start and where you're going to end. And the key thing is you're not doing your life story. This is not an autobiography, but you want to have some type of an idea, and you can move now. That's what my husband's doing right now for his next book. He's moving the chapters around. He did them in a certain order that he thought was his casual outline, but now we're moving them around after, he's been working on this for several years. And so keep that in mind. Just start organizing that way. The other way is what I call mind mapping. And this is actually used in marketing, but I love to use it with books because it's easy to understand. You have a tree, and the base of the tree that is your core, that is the theme of your book. So I tell people when I do this in the classroom, when I do this at the Piper Center at ASU, I get poster board and markers, and I have everybody draw a tree. They draw in. So get a big piece of paper so you have some room, and draw that, and then draw branches. Draw at least 8 or 10 branches. And from there, then you can tag the branches with your threads, the threads to your theme. It helps you think about, okay, the core of the tree is the theme. This is what I'm writing about in general, but it has all these different little parts. So then you go out onto each limb and you write another section. It might be your chapters. They might end up being your chapters. So those are your branches, and then you can put leaves on your branches and go out even farther. Just depends on how much you want to do, but you start with the core of your story. So that's how I would suggest you start, either building the tree or that you do a casual outline. And then if all else fails, just start writing. There's always that too, just write with fierce abandon. But remember, you're going to be going back through your pages many, many times before I even send anything to my critique group for me or my husband. We've each read it 3-4 times. I probably go through my pages at least a half dozen times before the critique group gets it. And then it's a couple rounds after that before it goes to an editor. And I know that sounds like a lot, and it is. That's why you have to love it, and you'll stick with it because it's important that it's done correctly. especially if you're going around the bend the first time. You don't want it to be too obvious that it's your first book. Okay, who else has a question?
Patricia, real quickly, the books on your back wall, are those yours and your husband's, or are those from
Yes.
other authors?
Yeah, no, those are our books.
Those are your
And
books.
if you want to do that, it's a fun thing to do. You can go to the website for Walgreens, CVS. I don't know who else I use, Staples, and you send them the picture of your front cover, and then they stretch it on canvas, on a block of wood, and put it on your wall. So that's our trophy wall.
Yeah.
And and it's fun. I think everybody should do that. Have a trophy
One thing that
wall.
got me interested in this is I've read quite a few biographies and autobiographies of people that were at the time extremely well known in the community,
Mhm.
and one by Carl Eller, who was a very, very extremely successful entrepreneur in the 70s, 80s,
He was
90s.
the general. Oh, he was the guy from Tucson, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, yes.
And he wrote, his theme was integrity is all you have. And
Hmm.
he not only it wasn't all about all his successes. He really emotionally explained all his when he's had a lot of failures, and built the story about how his integrity was the only thing that pulled him out and got him through those
Hmm.
really tough times. And the other one is a Six Tires and No Business Plan by Bruce Hawley Sr. That one's not, I don't think that's been out on the big list, but he also tells this story. And I pick these up and I can't stop reading them when I get
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
finish them usually with 24 hours sometimes. So that's what kind of got me thinking. I said, I have parts of my story I'd like to have my kids here that they probably don't know, or my grandkids here.
Right,
Thought
right.
I'd
I'll
just
give you a
start with a memoir.
yeah. Well, remember the grandkids, because with my husband's first book, his grandson now is 24. But when he was in high school in San Diego, he had to do a book report. So we sent him a copy for his own. His parents had already had a copy of my husband's first book, and his grandson read it and went and did a book report in his class. And he went to a big high school in San Diego, and of course he got an A, and he did great. People loved the book, and so you never know what's going to happen with your grandchildren. We kiddingly say my husband, I don't have kids, and my husband's kids don't give a rip about our books, but the grandkids read them all, so
Yeah.
go figure. They're a different generation, they're just coming from a different place, and it's wonderful. So, yeah, you want to pursue that for sure.
Well, I have 9 grandkids ranging from 10 years old to 30.
Well, good. That's lots of book reports. It's super.
Yeah.
Book
Well,
reports
this has
become
been
book
very
reviews.
informative. Thank you very much. I
Oh,
really
you're
appreciated your
welcome.
presentation. It's been excellent.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay. So who else has a question? We're
Patricia?
at around 11 o'clock. Jane?
Patricia, yeah, I have done a few of your memoirs already. Actually, I read a couple of your books, and I wanted to know, your husband's too. And I wanted to know, I'm still a little, cloudy about the type of voice that you want to use. You obviously don't want first person. You said you want a nonfiction voice. Can you give me an example or perhaps a reading from one of your books so I can get a feel for the type of tone and voice that you use?
Well, first of all, I do use first person, and I think that's important with memoir. Now, there's narrative in every book, so there's going to be that narrative, but I think the first person's really important. Let me see if I can pull something out. Okay, hold on. I got a stack of books here.
Oh, it's dark. Dark and through.
All right, let me see if I can come up with something.
And volume, I don't know how to
I'll read a little bit, and it's called The Sojourner Center. And it's from the Three Husbands book. And the Sojourner Center is a place in Phoenix that takes abused women and houses them, regardless of whether you have your own home, you have family, or what, houses them safely. And this is what happened after I went to the hospital. I went to the emergency room, and 10 stitches in my head, here I go. It's called The Journey. And I always put a quote at the top of every chapter. And the quote on this one said, "Good friends are like shock absorbers. They help you take the humps and bumps on the road of life." And I had a friend come and pick me up at the hospital, and she'd already had it set up for me to go to the Sojourner Center. And if you're looking for a charity to send money and donate, well, this is a good one. "I reserved a safe place for you to spend the night," Diane said. This is my friend who came to the hospital, with her usual take charge attitude. "I called a women's shelter. They have space for you," she continued before I could comment. "It's the Sojourner Center in downtown Phoenix, about 30 minutes from Scottsdale." I was not happy about the idea and did not want to go, but I knew I needed shelter from the storm. Who did she think she was telling me what to do? I was a grown woman. I had a mind of my own. I could make my own decisions and my own mistakes. Yes, many of my past decisions nearly cost me my life, but I was tired of being told what to do. I was angry, defeated, and ashamed. She knew it too. Okay, then on occasion, I do italics. This is in italics. "How can she even think of making a decision to take me to a strange place? I'm mentally and physically weak from the night's trauma. I'm tired and humiliated, like the fish that doesn't get away and finally succumbs. I want to hide from the world. Maybe I can hide in that place for a day or two and then go home. The stay is 30 days, she added quickly, like we did in recovery. This was unacceptable to me. The idea felt suffocating. 30 days. I had almost drowned in violence just hours before. I needed oxygen and wide open spaces to breathe freely. God, give me a sign, I prayed silently in the car. Take me to a safe place. Help me to learn to break this situation and obsession. The fading paint on the old house we were about to enter seemed like a sign from God that the old could be new and different and that I could change and grow. Post-traumatic stress was forever. It was coming home to rest like the rocks on the shoreline that were pounded relentlessly by the surf and reshaped each season by rain and sand. I too would be different. This time I was determined to be strong and steadfast. So I write dialogue. I write my own words in first person. I write in italics what's going on in my head, which is also first person. I'm talking to myself. And then there's some narrative in there about the description of the property, the Sojourner Center house, which was at 4th Street in Jackson, by the way, back 40 years ago when this happened. So they've come a long way since then.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Okay, so we need another question, or should we work on an activity?
I think Susan Immel had a question. She mentioned in chat.
Okay, yeah. Are you checking the chat for me, Kathleen? Or you have been?
Yeah. And Susan mentioned she wondered how to ask a question. So I told her I'd mention it to you.
Okay, so where's Susan?
There she is right there. Susan, are you do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, she just mentioned it in chat, so I just mentioned it.
Okay, all right, so she's good. All right, anybody else?
Yeah, hi, I had a question.
Oh,
yes.
So I feel like whenever I write like some scene that happened, I often rely heavily on trying to get all of my descriptors in of what was going on, like trying to get everything in. But I feel like that's a crutch for not being able to maybe explain like my feelings, like if I'm able to recall texts with someone or a time and a place and all of these things, I feel like I rely too much on that um rather than like going into my own head and talking about how I was feeling. So do you have any advice to like get farther into yourself and like explore your feelings more like that?
Well, what I've found, and I mentioned earlier, I've been in a critique group for 20 years. Now I'm fortunate because I started my writers group about the same time, and I have women from that group. I have 3 besides myself. I've done it for all my books. And what that means and could mean for you is that you get immediate feedback from somebody else that can see, this is where you need to put, how did you feel about this? How did you feel about that? That's one of my favorite things to look for in somebody's memoir writing, because you're right, it's very easy to put everything else in there and not, tell us how you felt or what, maybe even in depth what actually happened. So I think if there's any way that you can find a writing partner, I don't know where you are, or there are writing partners in critique groups online. They're not my first choice, but I have done them. If you can have a one-on-one with somebody or a couple other people. And while I'm talking about a critique group, let me just say this. What we do is every month we have about a dozen pages each. We email them to each other a week before we do a Zoom call. We used to meet in person. Like I said, I've been doing the critique for 20 years, and the Zoom really works. It just works for everybody for the critique. And once I get their pages, which I'm doing right now because the critique meeting is the 21st, I've already gone through the pages once. I look for the feelings. I look for what's missing. I look for things that need to have more explanation, and just as a couple samples. So think about, it has to be somebody that you trust and you feel good about. If somebody in my critique group told me today that they didn't want to continue, I would be very careful who that 4th person would be that I would bring in. It'd probably be somebody, well, it would be somebody from my writers club. The other thing is with the critique group, once we get the pages, I read them the first time right away. I let them sit a few days, then I go back and I delve deeper in looking for things that are missing, especially the emotion. How do I feel reading it? Does this really, and in every story, everything isn't going to move you to tears, but I should feel something when I'm reading their story. Do I feel compassion for them? Am I saddened? Do I have empathy? What's going on? And if the feelings are there, that'll happen. If they're not, it won't happen. And then we eventually meet, and we meet for a couple hours and go over the pages that we've worked on, and they talk about my pages, and then we get, I just mail them to them. Some of them email, whatever it works. So you might think about finding a writing partner and eventually getting into a critique group, because they're valuable, and that will pull out the things that, if you're not going deep enough or you're not going down to your soul, that will come out.
And Lisa had a question too. Lisa?
Yes.
Hi, I have had a lot. I'm a retired nurse, and I've had a lot of experiences that I'm afraid to write about because the people involved, I don't know, liability issues. I mean, I don't know what to do with some of this information, or if it's okay to tell about all these personal experiences that I've had with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you made me think of, I did a proofread on a memoir that a friend's husband, who's a therapist in Tempe, he wrote about his experiences. And of course, that's client, confidentiality, all of that. And but he wrote it without disclosing any names. He wrote it in a different location. He put it in a different location in a different time, and really did the analysis of what was the good that came out of the story. He told enough of each story so that he could pull out, the success of that person's experience in therapy. And I think you could do that, maybe, and not say, well, it was, back in the day, it was Mesa Lutheran Hospital or whatever, and play around with some of that. And that's not being untruthful. It's like you say, there's some protection that people should have when they are in the hospital, or you were in an ER situation. Is that what you
Oh,
said?
I've been in the NICU for 45 years, so I've seen a lot of stuff.
Right, you have. The approach I would take with it is, number one, you just said it, you've seen a lot. And what did you learn? What did you learn from experiences from 40 years ago to your last 5 years before you retired or whatever? And how did things bother you more? Did you feel differently later in your career? Or, was there a point where, your enthusiasm hit the wall?
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a
of
lot of,
course.
a lot of those things.
Of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I think you should write it with no names, no specific, I don't know. I hate to say change the location, but you probably should. And change it enough for your comfort.
Okay.
I don't know that you would even want to consider getting feedback from anybody on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And
Okay.
would be
I
impossible.
have a question, not directly involving memoirs, but I just finished a book co-written by John Grisham with Jim McCloskey. It's only the second nonfiction that Grisham was ever involved with, but it's co-written in a number of chapters. He wrote half the book, and Jim McCloskey wrote half the book. What would you call that? There's a series of 10 stories, each with the same theme, but a totally different story. What kind of a book would you call that?
Well, if they've written fictional stories, right? Or is
No,
it true
this
stories?
this is a nonfiction.
This is a nonfiction. Whose stories are they? The other person or Grisham's?
I think they're McCloskey's mostly, but John Grisham was involved, uh, associated with his organization, where he knew about a lot of them. And when they went to write the book, John Grisham agreed, you write half the chapters, you write 5 chapters, I'll write 5 chapters, and then we'll work them out. And there's different writing styles, clearly, between the two of them on their
Well,
styles.
yeah. Well, first of all, they're co-authors.
Yeah.
It is memoir, but also probably Grisham is the stronger writer. He's almost a ghostwriter on the other person's stories, I would guess. But he doesn't have to disclose that because that's what ghostwriters do. But I would see it in definitely in the memoir nonfiction category. Depends on what the organization is too. It might
His
and how
name's
much.
prominent. I think that he asked him, I think that McCloskey asked him. Grisham was very much involved in the organization emotionally, and 'cause he saw what he was doing, and he wanted John Grisham's name on the book.
Mm-hmm,
And John Grisham's
mm-hmm,
name is first on the book, and both of them are on their same big bold letters. So I think that helped
mm-hmm.
sell the book.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he's famous.
But
Yeah, he's
he's only done
famous.
2. But he said a real interesting comment. He wrote very candidly. I thought, wow, like he's talking to me, And he says he found that the nonfiction was much more difficult to write than the fiction. He says because
Mm-hmm,
fiction, I just make everything up. He says
mm-hmm.
here I have to be factually accurate, and
Right.
tremendous amount of research and time to be factually accurate. So he says his preference is to do nonfiction.
Mm-hmm,
Excuse me, fiction.
mm-hmm,
His preference to do fiction because he says it's more fun and more enjoyable, and you don't have to worry about the facts. That's what he said.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, in any memoir, there's always research that can be done, and I'm sure even with Lisa writing about working in the hospital and all those decades,
Yeah.
there's still research to be done to remember things. And I'm not saying you're losing your memory, but I had to do that with my own books, places that I lived. I was in seminary with my first husband in Iowa in the late 60s, early 70s. And that's another lifetime ago. I mean, that is a long time ago. And I called the university. I asked all about what was going on now with the seminary, the town, everything. I didn't necessarily want to take a trip to Dubuque, Iowa, but it was invaluable to call and talk to people and just start talking about things about the campus and about the way they've structured their seminary and all of that, and what was involved even back in the late 60s. So research is critical no matter what the topic is. If you are struggling to remember, if you can't actually see everything that happened. And I had some of that problem. I couldn't actually visualize that campus, and I had been there for 3 years. It was just so much had happened since then, obviously. 1969 is a long time ago. So anyway, I think that research is powerful, and I mentioned earlier, I did a lot of research when I wrote about grief. Absolutely. I wanted to learn everything about, because it's really a mystery. It's a miracle and a mystery in our lives, for sure. Okay, so anybody else have a question? Yes, no? How we doing?
Can I ask something? Hello?
Yes.
If you need to read one memoir, what will be the one top memoir that, like, your favorite memoir that you didn't write? It's not you wrote.
You're gonna laugh when I tell you this, and it was totally unexpected. But I said earlier that I have a spiritual theme through all my books, and this is an old book. I don't even know if I still have a copy of it, but it just pops into my mind as one of my favorites, and I've read a ton. But it's Goldie Hawn's memoir, and it's called "The Lotus Grows in the Mud."
Oh.
It's all about her spiritual journey to India and to all these other places. It's not about, I mean, sure, she talks about being on Laugh-In, but that is not the book. And you would think that, I don't know if you're old enough to even remember the Laugh-In on television, I mean, it was Laugh-In and Walter Cronkite, that was it, nobody else was important. But the thing is, that book surprised me. That book was suggested to me because of the things that I was interested in. It totally surprised me. I love the book. I love the story about her relationship with her dad that was just totally unexpected. And she's a very, very bright person, very, very bright person, and gave that dumb blonde persona on TV. So that's, the lotus grows in the mud, and the lotus flower does grow in the mud. And that's the metaphor that she used. But there are lots of them. Like I said, I've read celebrities, and I've read a lot of people in my writers club books as well. I will mention one thing that I do with my own books, and it's fun. And I figure it comes to me just, and then it comes to me as an idea, and then I make a decision. But I've mailed my books out to different people, to celebrities that I think they should read my book. And you should feel that way too. And I just mailed a book to Sandra Bullock. And I got her studio address, and we'll see if it comes back. Probably not. But the reason I sent her a book is she just announced about her recovery journey and her alcoholism. And I love her as an actress. She's sort of the all-American girl, she epitomizes why people stereotype and have a stigma about women and alcohol. And she's just, the all-American girl that's living her life. And so anyway, she's been, I don't know, just this past year, this has all come to the forefront. And ironically, she portrayed an alcoholic woman in one of her better movies, and I can't think of the name of it. So you might think about that when you're writing along, it'll come to you. I've mailed out, if I say a dozen books in the last 20 years to different people that aren't friends or family, but just I mailed one to the White House one time, and got a lovely letter back, And so you just, sometimes you just have to do that if you believe in your book and you love your book. Okay, so any other questions?
Can I ask a follow-up question very quick?
Sure, absolutely.
do you have to retire from your job to write like at what age you write a memoir? I mean, what do you have to wait until you retire from your job? You are no longer working for that company or college?
No. I mean, it's your own timeline, and that's a good topic because you do have to. You have to set up some kind of a writing plan. Eventually you need a marketing plan for the book, but you really need a writing plan almost from the get-go and figure out a couple things. First of all, when do you have time to write? When are you willing to write? What is your most productive time of the day? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? I like to do things early in the morning. In the summer, I live in Arizona, and in the summer I'm up at 5, in the winter, maybe 6. But I'm a morning person. Now, I haven't had what you would call a real job. I've had an office at home. I don't know, since God, I can't even remember, 30 years ago. So I work it around my schedule. I've had either done consulting, training, teaching, and work the writing around that schedule. But it's always important, and I'm always doing something toward promoting my books, writing the next book, working on my writers club, talking to other authors, helping my husband with his books every day. But I block it out. I still keep an old day timer. I put it in my phone, but I also mark it in my day timer that this 3 or 4 hours, this is writing time. And I think it's important for everybody to set up their own schedule. But a writing plan is really important, because if you don't do that, and maybe you have a deadline. When I did the Sick as My Secrets book, I wanted it done before my 50th class reunion. So I had a deadline. That reunion was in July, and I was still working on finalizing with the editor in January. Now that's cutting it close. It was like I was obsessed. I don't recommend that people do that.
Yeah.
But having a goal of saying, okay, in 2 years, I'm going to do this. Maybe in 2 years, I'm going to be going here, and I want to do an event with my book. I think it's really important, no matter how many events that you do, conferences that you go to and promote your book festivals, whatever, that you go back to where it all started. I've gone back to the library in my little hometown of 3,000 people in Michigan and had an event every time I've had a book come out. We do the same thing in Oregon with my husband's books, because it's really important to go back where the core is of who you are, and how, and where you went from there. Now that might not be comfortable for everybody, but I think it's important, and that might match with a deadline. So depending on where you are now, you might say, okay, in 2 years, I want this book done in 2 years. I want this book done in a year. But give yourself time. When somebody asks me, how long does it take to write a book? As long as it takes. Don't put pressure on yourself to finish a book in a year. It would be unfair.
I mean, is it better to start with finding a potential publisher, and first, like, identifying a potential publisher, so that you can have a deadline if they accept your proposal, like a memoir proposal? Maybe, is that a good way to go?
If you decide that you want to, and I would always encourage people to do this, if you decide that you want to send out query letters with your book, absolutely you want to do that, and you do that right up front. You need to have a good synopsis of your book. You need to really, you can find, I can, send you a copy of my book proposal on one of my books, but there's lots of information online about book proposals. I've pitched agents at conferences just for the experience. Even though I have my own company, I like self-publishing. But you want to have a good query letter, and you want to have a book proposal, but you also want to be writing the book, because they might say, okay, in 3 months, send me 3 chapters. I mean, and be prepared by going to their website. If you have a particular range that you're going to fall into, you know what type of book you're going to write. Obviously, this is memoir, so do some research on the guidelines for these different agencies. You know, they're everybody thinks of New York for agencies, but there are actually some really good ones in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, other major cities. So you need to do, there's a lot out there, and it takes time and research. And then just feel some of them out. You can't, and one thing is you can't get discouraged. The only thing I would say, because I don't sell independent publishing over query letters, because that's a personal choice. But you do need to be prepared to, to have rejection letters. You got to let that roll off your back. Having a book proposal is critical. There's about 10 parts to a book proposal. I don't know how many words mine is, but it's 10 parts, so it's more than 10 pages. And be willing to go to national conferences and pitch agents, and just maybe go to Barnes and Noble and find a place in Barnes and Noble where you think your book would sit, and look at the books on that shelf and who did they publish with, who published their books on that theme or that category, to get some ideas of publishing houses. But right now, they're probably, if I said 6, it's probably an exaggeration of the major publishing houses in this country, in the world. There's several in Germany that have bought out companies that were here. And but anyway, a good query letter is the very first thing, and you can get samples online. Google will tell you everything. So anyway, so if that's attractive to you, then you should definitely pursue that route.
I mean,
I think everybody
should. I look at that shelf, but 2 problems. 1, I'm not in New York or San Francisco. I'm in Florida. 2, that shelf, when I look at that shelf, I see Jerry Seinfeld. I see, all the celebrities' books. They are already celebrities, and they get, they get a big advance. They write that book. I'm not in that category. I don't know which. Is there a publisher for beginner, non-celebrity, just, people for publishing memoir? You know what I mean? It's like, is there any publisher like that?
Okay, when you do your research, you want to research publishers for memoir. That's going to break it down. Something else that you might do, if you don't, like I said, I'm a big proponent of going to book conferences to meet face to face with people that are looking for books. The people that are there looking for books. It might cost you $25 to have 15 minutes with somebody that's looking for, in my case, let's say, or anybody, just, they're looking for memoir, they're looking for women's fiction, they're looking for sci-fi, whatever it is. And when I've had that experience, they have everybody in a big room, you're in a category, you get your number, you're on the clock for 15 minutes to pitch your book to that person. But when you go to that conference and you sign up to pitch somebody, it will ask you what criteria is your book, so that they match you with the right person. You might even look at, I get Writer's Digest magazine. I love that magazine. I've been getting it for decades. In the back, or in different parts of the magazine, but especially in the back, it will list conferences around the country. There are agents that write for that magazine that, advertise in the magazine. But, I'm sure there are lots of conferences in that area where you are. I don't know that. I haven't done that. But there are other things that you can do. But these magazines have been around for a while. Somebody just sent a thing in the chat about publishers. They're publishing magazines, publishing in organizations. Publishers Weekly is a good magazine. So you just need to do some research. I wouldn't recommend somebody, because that's not what I do. But I can tell you, and having a good query letter is important, and having a good book proposal. And be writing in case they just contact you right away and, they want chapters, and then you don't sleep for a week till you get everything to them, So anyway, good luck with that.
Thank you.
It's definitely possible to get picked up by an agent and a publisher. Definitely.
Thank you very
It's
much.
amazing who you'll meet at a writers conference, these national conferences. A really good one that I'm going to go to this summer, I just submitted to be a speaker, is the Willamette Writers Conference. Now, that's a long way from Florida. It's in Oregon. It's in Portland, Oregon. The Willamette Writers Conference. I've also done the Henderson Group's conference in Las Vegas, the ASU conference here. San Diego State University has a good writers conference, Long Beach. But see, I live in the West, so you might ask around, even just go to the library or bookstore and ask them about, conferences in the Southeast where you are. If you didn't want to travel all the way to Portland, Oregon, but that conference has gone on for 60 years. So, think about that. Oh yeah, it's really incredible. And it's online too. You can do that online. Now that's another thought, is you can do these conferences online. Yeah. The Willamette Writers has been online now for about 10 years. So, okay, I want to talk about, unless somebody's got another question, we've talked a little bit about it already. And I want to give you before I do that, are we clear with questions? Do we have anybody else that has a question before?
Susan asked one more question. She asked, regarding writing to heal, do you know of any intentionally compassionate writing groups?
Intentionally compassionate. Well, I think it's the people, to say that there's, that where is this person located? Here in Arizona or somewhere else?
Susan, you want to answer her? Where are you located?
I'm in Arizona.
Okay. What I would suggest that you do is, you can do a couple of things. First of all, you can contact me, and I don't have room in my critique group, but I have other members in my writers club, and you might want to come and visit my writers club. And I can possibly pair you up with a writing partner that eventually could develop into a critique group to help you. How does that sound? What more are you looking for? You tell me.
Well, I do write, and I was in a writing group, but they're fiction writers, and it's a very different, very different purpose.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. With my writers group, we're strictly memoir nonfiction. And that's what I've done for 20 years. Yeah. So what you need to do is find those people. Now, that was the whole reason for starting my writers club, was to connect and network with other memoir writers. Now, with Arizona Authors Association, it's the same thing. You might go on the website. Are you a member of Arizona Authors Association, or did you?
No, not at the moment.
No. You might look at my group, which is Scottsdale Society of Women Writers and the Arizona Authors Association. Look at the websites. I'll be happy to, connect you with somebody else. But right now, I keep my group to 4 people to make sure that it really functions well.
Right.
And that's what you want to do. But even if you just start, like I said, with one other person writing memoir, and you become writing partners, you send each other your pages. Doesn't matter where you live in the Valley. That's why, Zoom is a real blessing. You can send the pages on email, read each other's pages, give each other feedback. With my group, we've had a lot of sensitive things come through with our writing. And if you're in a situation where somebody isn't respectful of that, then you sever that relationship. I've only been through that once when I first started my writers club, my critique group. And I had somebody in the critique group who was very offended by this woman's memoir. And this woman had a relationship with a priest for years and eventually became pregnant. He left the priesthood. She left her job and the diocese. They got married. They now have other children. They've expanded their education. But somebody in that group was so devout that they just could not allow this person to tell their story. They were so critical and judgmental. That's only happened to me once in 20 years. So the odds of that happening to you is pretty slim, I guess is my point of the story. But you certainly can feel people out. And you might do that by, like Kathleen and I can recommend a couple memoir writers that would partner with you. So why did you contact? Yeah, contact us after we're done today.
The other question I have about discipline writing, and you kind of started with the when you talked about a writing plan, but I do have a hard time being disciplined about writing.
Well, that's sort of a personal thing. I don't know what to say to you. I guess you'll become disciplined if you're writing about something you feel passionately about. That's really important, that you have a purpose for writing that story. If you're not disciplined about your writing, you're probably writing the wrong story. And I mean, I don't know what you're writing about. I'm just saying the discipline will come if you feel passionately about it. If you feel that you have a story that needs to be told, that there are people that should read your story, that you want to get your story out, that you're proud of it, or how far you've come with it, whatever the situation might be. So if you're not disciplined, and then the writing plan, I talked about the writing plan, set up the writing plan and put yourself on a schedule. I don't know how many appointments you have during the week, but I have a yoga class on Monday. Nothing. Now my MLK is tomorrow or 2 days, so I don't have yoga on Monday. But normally, when there's not a holiday, that's where I am. I do not falter. I've been doing yoga since the 70s. You've got to look at your writing the same way. This is really important to me, and you'll figure it out. You're more disciplined probably than you think so.
Thank you. Oops.
Okay, excuse me.
Oh, I think part of it is the fear because of the past abuse, and my ex did put a 10-year gag order in our divorce decree, and so that kind of goes along with. But I'll get with you on that, because you mentioned a legal protection
Yes.
earlier. Thank you. I'm finished.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. We'll chat again for sure. Kind of think about everything and come up with some questions, and we'll go from there. Okay. I don't know if I can get my last screen up or not, or I'll just tell you about it. Let's see. Okay. Now I want to go one more. Is it going to let me go to my next screen? Nope, it's not. Let me go back and see if I can switch it in here. Okay. Nope. All right, I'll just tell you about it. How's that? Let's keep it simple since we're at the end of our day. Okay, and we talked about some of this already. So I have this listed as homework, and I'm being facetious when I say homework because, you're doing your thing with your book. But the mind map that I talked about with the tree is really important. It really will help you get to where you can understand what you're writing and get you organized. So it might help with discipline too. I don't know, but I know that the tree trunk, I've used it explaining marketing plans to people, writing plans. You can use it in your personal life. It's just a great visual. That's really what it is. It's a visual for you to see the theme of your book on the trunk, the branches that are all the threads that go into your theme. They could be, as I said, your chapters. An important thing with your journal, even if you're not a journal type person, you're going to be now, because it's critical with your writing that you have that side think tank over there between you and the journal. So what you want to do also during the time you're developing this tree is ask yourself what makes my story stand out, and that's really what's going to make a difference when your book is published, but it also will make a difference now with your writing. What is it that stands out about your story? What is unique about your story? What's different? I wrote about grief. Well, there are tons of books out there about grief. There weren't very many about siblings and grief. There were actually more books about grieving the death of a pet than the death of a sibling. It was amazing. But the thing is, the way the book was set up, the uniqueness of the book is what makes it stand out, and it's different. It's not just another grief book. So think about your book, whatever your topic is, whatever you're going to do, what is it that's going to separate it from all the books on the shelf or all the books on Amazon on that same topic? Part of the uniqueness is that it's your story. Your story is different than anybody else's story. So that's the first plus. The other thing is, I mentioned the casual outline, and literally just jotting down maybe even the topics for your chapter headings. Maybe that's a good way to start. Well, I want to write about I'll give you a good example. The book I'm working on right now is going to be a bunch of short stories about growing up in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan at Mackinac. Now, it is, I've talked about this before, but not about my childhood and the uniqueness of that area. And so what I did was, when I first started, was I wrote all the things that I think about childhood: ice skating on the lake, tobogganing in the woods. We grew up in a little town of 3,000 people. There's still no headlights, still no street lights, excuse me. So I write about that. I write about the baseball field. Now there's a big house on this empty lot that was always the neighborhood baseball field. I write about the neighborhood's pets. The gal Tootie across the street had an old mare. The Feldkamp girls down the road, they had a deer. They saved a little fawn one time in the woods and raised it, and the deer would follow them all around the neighborhood. So, I mean, I just started writing the list. Okay, tobogganing, skating, softball. Another one was we'd clean the beach up in the spring. Everybody in the town would clean the beach up. So beach cleaning is another one of my little stories. And it's important because it's unique to that area. Most places, you know, they have a crew and they hire them, they go out, and because all kinds of things fall off the ships and they settle in the bottom, the lake freezes, the whole thing. I've written about the black bear in the area. I hit one time with my dad's car. I mean, it's a story in and of itself. But, you know, the animals, the different animals that were just there, they were prevalent, you know, the skunk and the raccoon. And, you know, the big thing was to turn all the lights off in the house and watch the raccoons try to get into the trash cans. You know, I mean, there's entertainment for you. And but the thing
we had
is,
a moose crash through the pizza restaurant.
Yes, exactly. So I guess my point is that, just, if nothing else, take those little things that are rolling around in your head, you know, about, you know, the era that you want to write about, you know. And I want to keep it really through middle school and high school, and, you know, those kinds of things. Campfire Girls, Bluebirds. And you can start that way, but somewhere you need to start with the casual outline and treat yourself, because that'll be fun. You'll be, whether they're good memories or bad, you'll still have a smile on your face just thinking about how those things have impacted your life later down the road. And that's that can always be at the end. And that's what I did with the first book with my sister. I picked all these different words that oh, we got a minute. When all else fails, have a book handy. Just as an example, I used words like compassion, freedom, friendship, love, contentment, tolerance, hope, patience, courage, gratitude, acceptance, faith, happiness. And that's really how I started the book. So think about, that might be a route to go, and it might not be the way it ends up, but it's a good place to start. And then you can always make adjustments after that, and move your table of contents around, your outline around. But that's what I'd like you to do, is think about the theme and the trunk of the tree. The branches are the threads. The casual outline can be a supplement to that. Even if you've been writing for a while on your book, it might really help you organize the book. Because if you've been writing on it for a while, you might not even remember what the first thing was that you wrote, as crazy as that sounds, but it's very possible that can happen. So I don't have anything else. I said earlier that I'll be happy to do a text or an email with people if you have any questions, about what we talked about today, about self-publishing, about my writers club, critiques. I have a couple things I can send you too. Excuse me,
I'd
Kathy.
like to mention a couple of things real quick, if I may. I do want to mention that if anyone who is a non-member, if they would like a complimentary issue of our Arizona Authors Digest, which is a really good magazine that we have from the Arizona Authors Association, just write to me at arizonaauthorsAssociation@gmail.com. And I'll get you that complimentary copy. There's no obligation. I also want to mention the contests are new 2026 Arizona Authors Literary Contest is open, and we're one of the few contests that have an oldie but goldie section for self-published books. So if you ever self-published a book that you feel like it didn't get enough attention at the time and it's years old and it doesn't qualify for other contests, that oldie but goldie category is one of our most popular categories. And we're at arizonaauthors.org. So arizonaauthors.org, and the contest is there. And I also want to just say how grateful I am to Patricia, because she has done this workshop for free for us. She donates her time to us. I mean, this is a workshop that you spend a lot of money on if you get it from other places, and she's donating her time to us here, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And we have a lot of workshops. If you do join the Arizona Authors Association, we have a lot of workshops like this. It is for members and their guests. So we have workshops coming up on travel, on romance writing, on the legal issues, on marketing books. So we have a lot of workshops, and write to me for a copy of the Arizona Authors Digest. And I think you'll love the publication. We've got a great editor right now in Kyle Patton. So anyway, thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. I always enjoy doing this, and I want to thank everybody that asks questions. That's always the speaker's nightmare, is you allot some time for questions and nobody says anything. So anyway, thank you to all of you that ask questions to keep things rolling along. And I think that's it. And contact me whenever you have a question or you need something.